This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
Next on the 5 o'clock report.
Your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports.
Inmates run the prison. Officers get in trouble for not doing what the inmates want.
People think they're alone in defending life and family and marriage. They can come to the state capitol, make a statement, and see they are not alone.
So many of the kids have never been told that Jesus loves them.
Now, let's go to the newsroom.
Good afternoon and welcome to the broadcast. I'm Family Life News anchor Sarah Harnish. Warmer weather is coming. Hang in there. It's going to be 43 degrees by Monday. Kevin has details for winter-weary New York and Pennsylvania in minutes. It was a bizarre sight in a Manhattan court today for the hearing of alleged CEO killer Luigi Mangione. Flocks of young women and people dressed in Mario Kart costumes carrying signs that said "Free Luigi" packed the hallways. The crowd taking a stand against the cost of health care by supporting an alleged murderer. Mangione was found in Altoona, Pennsylvania after a multi-day manhunt. Some are worried people with that belief system could be selected for the jury. Joseph Tully is a criminal defense attorney.
I don't think that a judge would allow that defense to come into court. Like, look, I had to take this action because too many innocent people were being hurt. But I do think the public is getting more and more swayed by the people who have a lot of wealth, do not care about us, and they're not looking after us, and in fact they're causing harm. So I do think that the defense will look out for it in picking the jury.
The 26-year-old is accused of killing CEO Brian Thompson on a busy Manhattan sidewalk. Mangione is also facing federal charges and charges in the state of Pennsylvania where he was captured. Today was just a status hearing. Mangione faces life in prison without the possibility of parole if he's convicted. President Trump took a call with all 50 governors this morning. It got a little heated on the phone when the governor of Maine, Janet Mills, told Trump outright she believes transgender boys should play on girls' sports teams. Trump's reply:
Your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply, because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding. Every state, good, I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one.
He is right. A 2023 Gallup poll found 69% of Americans don't want boys in girls' sports. The New York Times conducted a poll in January 2025 among Democrats that support the LGBTQ plus movement and found 67% of them also believe athletes should only be allowed to play on sports teams that match their birth gender. Donald Trump has appointed Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro to the Council of Governors. He's one of 10 governors to serve on that bipartisan task force. The goal is to strengthen state-federal relationships on national security, disaster response, and military coordination. A shooting outside a Louisville DMV branch this afternoon has left 3 people dead. Police say no suspects are in custody and the shooter fled the scene. New York says it's willing to make concessions to end the workers' strike at dozens of prisons statewide. It's suspending some aspects of the HALT Act, which limits the use of solitary confinement. But guards say that's not enough, and things are upside down right now at jails and prisons across the Empire State. Former corrections officer Ernie Dole says it used to be
Officers ran the prison, inmates listened. Now, inmates run the prison. Officers get in trouble for not doing what the inmates want.
The guards are demanding better pay and working conditions. Governor Hochul says the strike is illegal and she's activated the National Guard to help maintain order. Dole's advice to the striking workers:
don't give up. Fight for what's right. No matter how much the governor says get back to work and do your job, she needs to do her job first.
Talks to end the prison strikes get underway next week. We have an update on Pope Francis, hospitalized in Rome. CBS reporter Vicky Barker.
The Pope's doctors have just delivered their first in-person update on his condition. They say he's getting occasional supplements of oxygen and is responding to drug therapy for his double pneumonia. He's also being treated for a complex lung condition.
Where do you shop? New data out today shows Amazon just beat Walmart in quarterly revenue for the first time ever. The online retail giant reported nearly $188 $1 billion in revenue during the fourth quarter to Walmart's $180 billion, online shopping topping in-person shopping. CPAC 2025 is well underway in Washington, D.C. Vice President J.D. Vance kicked off the Conservative Political Action Conference last night, openly discussing his faith.
The fundamental tenet of the Christian faith, it's not just a set of good moral principles, though it is that. The fundamental tenet of our faith is that the Son of God became man, he died, and then he raised himself from the dead. That is the fundamental tenet of the Christian faith, and I think so much flows from that.
CPAC bills itself as the most influential gathering of conservatives in the world. President Trump is set to speak too before that event wraps up on Saturday. And from conferences in D.C. to one in the Empire State, the largest single gathering of Christians anywhere in New York is happening next month at the state capitol. It's called Legislative Day, and it happens Tuesday, March 18th in Albany.
The people who the rest of the year think they're alone in defending life and family and marriage and holding those traditional values can come to the state capitol, make a statement, and see they are not alone.
Jason McGuire with New York Families.
This year we're going to prioritize some things along the lines of getting Christians more engaged in the political process, what that means, why they should do it, why we should be salt and light in the culture at large, including the political system.
Find out more about Legislative Day at newyorkfamilies.org. Still to come on the 5 o'clock report, a national report out on families in America, and New York and Pennsylvania aren't scoring well. Our own Bob Price breaks it down with our Capital Connection crew next at 5.
A break from the bitter cold is on the way. Temperatures this weekend will flirt with the freeze point, which gets us just back up to seasonable and reasonable levels. In the wake of a few leftover evening flurries, it'll just be rather cold overnight tonight. Cloud cover breaking at times. Low temps generally teens. Tomorrow, cloudy skies give way to some breaks of afternoon sunshine, the high 30 to 35. On Sunday, clouds, some sun, maybe a flurry in New York with high temperatures in the 30s.
Thank you, Kevin. It is Friday, and that means we check in with our Capital Connection team, Michael Gear, Jason McGuire, and Bob Price, hashing out what's happening at the Capitals. Let's listen in.
Pennsylvania's 34th on that list. New York is 48th. I guess you could say both states have some work to do, especially New York, and Jason, we'll get to you in a minute. But, Michael, I want to start with you.
Well, we're pleased to have participated in releasing this information that just came out this week that was produced by a team of sociologists from the University of Virginia. And basically, it's ranking the states looking at a number of different key factors on issues like fertility, marriage rates, and also how many teens are ending up living in homes where both a mother and a father are not present.
Yeah, just 56% of teens in Pennsylvania are growing up in homes with both a mom and a dad. In New York, I think it's something like 47%, Jason. In New York, there's only two other states in the country where it's worse to raise a family, Rhode Island and New Mexico.
It confirmed a lot of what we sensed. I mean, essentially, this structure index, the family structure index, will help both policymakers and the public understand that New York is a long ways to go to get to family stability. But essentially, you can't be neutral on the family. If you want to have a strong state and a strong nation, you want to have strong families. And if public policy is not upholding the family and elevating the importance of the family, well, then really you're sliding backwards and you're undermining it. So every public policy decision needs to be viewed through the lens of, does this help or hinder the family in the Empire State and across the country?
I hope public policy makers read this family structure report. This is based in science. This is empirical data that you can look at and see how our families are doing. And our families, Michael, are in real trouble. I want to ask you, how is Pennsylvania undercutting families, policymakers that is, and is there any legislation in the works to strengthen families in Pennsylvania?
Well, it's interesting to look at both the policy realm, but also the cultural realm on looking at these issues. So when we look at the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, there are certainly policies that undermine the well-being of families. There are policies in tax structure and in welfare programs and other things that actually are incentives to move away from marriage rather than towards marriage. And then when you look at the schools and things, we need to be teaching something called the success sequence, which is that you should try to graduate from college and then get a job and then get married before having children. If you follow that sequence, those three steps in that order, 97% of them will never be in poverty. That's an astounding statistic that we need to be teaching in our schools and our churches, and the government leaders need to understand that as well.
I want to ask you the same question. How is New York State policy undercutting families, but is there anything in the works in Albany to strengthen families?
Well, infamously, you hear about things like the marriage penalty. So if a couple is living together and is receiving certain state benefits, if they get married, they may lose some of their benefits. So that undermines marriage. We see the attacks on parental rights when it comes to areas of education and, just whether or not we can even define the terms mom and dad. We have to say parent one and parent two in our structure today. So there's a lot of things that we have to be looking at from a public policy perspective. But if we can keep it real simple, it really can go back to even the church. And if the church would simply step up and begin to celebrate and to preach about and recommend marriage, lift it up, prioritize that relationship, and set a model for the culture and society at large, well, I think we can make a lot of headway on moving forward on the family.
Jason, we can't ignore what's happening at prisons all over New York now. The guards have walked off the job, and it's become a powder keg out there. The governor calling in the National Guard. I mean, this is pretty crazy stuff going on here.
Well, essentially, I think you are seeing that breakdown of society. I mean, I see it in Albany all the time. Policymakers are breaking away from victims' rights and for the rights of the criminal. And we're now seeing that played out in even the corrections systems across the state. The safety of the officer seems secondary to what's going on in the prisons, in the jails. And yet we see that the state is walking away from protecting these officers when they're desperately crying out for help.
You can subscribe, listen to, and share Capital Connection and all of Family Life's original podcasts at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or at familylife.org. Time next for tonight's market report brought to you by Faithward Advisors. Stocks fell sharply yet again to end the week on Wall Street. At the final bell, the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 748 points to 43,428. The S&P 500 lost 104 points to 6013, and the NASDAQ dropped 438 points to 19,524. Faithward Advisors is a Christian financial planning firm online at faithwardadvisors.com.
What's the most valuable thing you have? Hi, I'm Rob West with today's Faith and Finance Minute. Jesus wants us to think about what's valuable differently than we typically do. In Matthew 13, he says, "The kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls. He found one that was very valuable, so he went away and sold everything he had, and he bought that pearl." Jesus is talking about relative value. The things people seek in life, money, fame, pleasure, pale in comparison to the priceless pearl of knowing Jesus. Indeed, other desires are worth giving up to get one thing. Think about that parable for the next few days. Are you pursuing lesser things rather than focusing your life on what's of the greatest value? We can help you learn to manage your money according to biblical principles when you download the free FaithFi app. You'll find it on our website at faithfi.com.
Coming up on the 5 o'clock report, a Bible curriculum picking up steam for Pennsylvania school children. The program just got featured on the massive Christian broadcasting network nationwide. We'll tell you more after weather with Kevin Williams.
Well, we've got a fairly quiet weather weekend ahead with moderating temperatures, not too much wind, and even a little bit of sun. In the meantime, it's going to be a cold night tonight. Still some lake flurries southeast of Lake Erie, Lake Ontario. They'll fade. Clouds will break there. Elsewhere across central and eastern Pennsylvania, partly cloudy. Low temps generally teens. Tomorrow, good deal of sunshine in central and eastern Pennsylvania. Quite a bit of cloudiness elsewhere with some breaks of afternoon sun, but not as cold as recent days. High temps, low 30s. On Sunday, clouds, some sun, maybe a flurry in New York with high temperatures in the 30s.
All right, Kevin, we will take it. Finally, at 5, hundreds of Pennsylvania school children are learning about God's love for them through a program called Bible to School.
For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen.
founded in Mannheim, Pennsylvania over 40 years ago. It has over 30 programs running in the Lancaster area and more than a dozen in and around Johnstown. Stacy Novak is executive director of the Laurel Highlands Bible to School program. She tells CBN.
So many of the kids have never been told that Jesus loves them. We have conversations with them. Do you know that you are valued? Do you know that you are loved? And it's like they are hearing this for the very first time.
Pastor Doug Black of Johnstown's Liberty Grace Church says it's bringing much needed hope to the city.
People kind of expect bad things. They've grown up in this generational expectation that nothing good's going to happen in Johnstown. And so it's hard to give them hope because it's not what they've experienced.
Yeah. Just in Johnstown alone, registration for Bible to School has ballooned from under 100 students in 2018 to over 800 students today. And that's the world that we live in for Friday, the 21st of February. I'm Sarah Harnish, and this is the 5 o'clock report on Family Life.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.